Again, this is Rock Mitchell, and thank you for being or listening to Major Result Podcast. You may know me from my previous podcast or my current podcast, which is Social Advice Podcast, where it don't take that long to get right, but that podcast has since shifted, and I have a co-host there, and we talk about things that deal with media and things of that like. But now we are dealing with Major Result Podcast, which deals with getting you to where you need to be and how you want to be getting there. And so it's motivation, it's inspiration, it's insight to get us where we need to be. I like to say major results is for those who are trending vertically, those of us who are trending vertically. So with that being said, I want to jump into episode 1 of the Major Result Podcast. Major results. Yes, so the first one, we're going to jump into a series, and the series is about reinvention. Reinvention. Why reinvention? Reinvention is important because if you have not gotten to where you want to be in life, whether you are 20, whether you are 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, it does not matter. Reinvention is available to everyone. You can reinvent yourself. But in order to do so, we have some things that we have to do to reinvent. You have to do a few things. So we want to jump right into today's podcast talking about reinvention. So with that, in this series of reinvention, the first thing we're going to talk about is assessment. You have to assess where you are when it comes to reinventing yourself. Well, let's ask the question, why do we want to reinvent ourselves? We want to reinvent ourselves because maybe we're not where we want to be financially. Maybe our physical health is not what we want it to be, or our spiritual health is not quite there yet. Yeah, I got a paper over here to the right. Or our emotional health, our relational health, or our aesthetic is not what we want it to be. So it's time for us to reinvent, but it starts with an assessment. It's like triage, or when you go to the doctors or you go to the hospital, what do? They say, hey, we want to send you to triage, so triage can then let you know where you are, what the problems are, how's your blood pressure, how's these different things working with your body. And so the first thing you have to do if you're going to reinvent yourself is you have to do an assessment. And so I kind of let you know what you have to assess first, but I want to give it to you again so you can write it down if you're listening to this podcast. You want to do a assessment, and that assessment starts with, let's start with financial, right? You want to take a look at how much money you're making, where you're storing that money, how you're managing that money, whether or not you're making enough money and you need a financial advisor, whether or not you're planning for the future, whether or not you have life insurance, whether or not you can even afford the place that you're living, or maybe in the assessment, you'll find that, wait a minute, I have way more money going out in expenses than I do have coming in revenue. So the first thing you want to do there is do an assessment. So how do we do that? I am not a financial advisor, but I do want to give you this quick tip. Write down what your monthly pay is and then go in and assess all your monthly bills. If you do not have money left over after your monthly bills, you need to assess, or you need to determine, what are you cutting? Is it Netflix? Is it cable? Is it trading this car in and getting something cheaper? Can I move to a place that's a little bit more financially in my wheelhouse? Those are the things you have to deal with, right? Those are things you want to address financially. And the good thing about fixing your finances is that once you do that, 9 times out of 10, a lot of the stress in your life goes away once you know that you have enough money to take care of your responsibilities. Okay. Secondly, you want to take care of you want to do an assessment of your physicality, or your physical, your health, right? How healthy am I? Am I overweight? Am I underweight? Do I have high blood pressure? Am I eating too many sweets? Am I eating too many cheeseburgers? When's the last time I've taken a vitamin? And those are the things you have to take a look at, whether or not that is how that's working in your life, your physical fitness. That's important because that's going to determine, ladies and gentlemen, how long you live. And so if you're physically not taking care of yourself, that may be the first thing that you want to reinvent, so you have time enough to live to see what you're reinventing. Fourth, spiritual. And a lot of people don't take this one serious because they deem spiritual as spooky. Spiritual is not spooky. Spiritual is your connection to the spirit, your connection to whatever divine entity. Mine is God, is Jesus. And I have to make sure that I'm spending time focusing on prayer and reading spiritual based text, as well as meditation, and making sure I'm living out what it is that I profess, which is my salvation. Right? So that's spiritual. So I would encourage you to try Jesus if you have not. But if you're doing something else, you want to make sure that you are aligned with that in the right place. Third, you want to make sure that you are emotionally where you need to be. And what I think people are finding out is that they are not as emotionally intelligent as they thought. So for those of you who don't know what emotional intelligence is, let me read it for you. Emotional intelligence is the ability to understand, use, and manage your own emotions in positive ways to relieve stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, and overcome challenges and diffuse conflict. A lot of people take issue with emotional intelligence because we feel as though when people do things, it's projecting onto us and it's making us feel a certain type of way, when ultimately you have control of your own emotions, control of the way that you feel. So, and it's right here on Google, but I'll give it to you. What is examples of emotional intelligence? You have being able to accept criticism and responsibility. A lot of people do not have that. Being able to move on after making a mistake. Being able to say no when you need to. That's boundaries. Being able to share your feelings with others. Being able to solve problems in ways that work for everyone, not being a narcissist or being very only inclusive in your decision making. Having empathy for others. A lot of people do not have empathy. It's being able to understand what other people go through. And having great listening skills. If you can master those elements of emotional intelligence, you got yourself something. I'll give it to you one more time just in case you're writing it down. Emotional intelligence is being able to accept criticism and responsibility, being able to move on after you've made a mistake, being able to say no when you need to, being able to share your feelings with others, being able to solve problems in ways that work for everyone around you, having empathy for other people, and having great listening skills. You got that? You got yourself something. Okay. Number 5 in this list is relationships. A lot of us are involved in relationships that do not serve us. And so as you begin to assess where you are in your life, you have to think, am I in a toxic relationship? Is the relationship I am in, is it serving me, and am I serving it? If it's just serving you, that means that you are taking on all of the benefit of the relationship and you're not giving anything out. What if you're just serving and you're not getting anything back? You're being depleted of love. You're being depleted of effort, depleted of your resources, and you're left with a gaping hole. So make sure that your relationships, whether it be friend relationships, family relationships, colleagues, acquaintances, whatever it is, make sure that your relationships, I'll use this word, your relationships are balanced, because we're reinventing ourselves to be our best self. And lastly, is one of my favorites, is the aesthetic. It's the fun stuff. You have to assess what your aesthetic is, whether or not you like the way you look, and not just physically, but do I like the clothes that I wear? Do I like the car that I drive? Do I like the house that I live in? Do I like the way that I talk? Do I like the way that I walk? Do I like my glasses? Do I like the places the place I go get coffee? Is there a better place for me to go get coffee? If you want a better place, you can go to Artifact. It's in Hamden. I love it. Look it up. That's where I get my coffee, right? That was a free ad. But I say all that to say this. Aesthetic is important because aesthetic motivates. for me, my aesthetic is everything. So when I go to my office, it has to feel, look, smell, be a certain type of way, because it puts me into a creative zone. So as a creative director and a CEO, I have to be in a vibe to get my work done. And the aesthetic of the place that I'm in, what I'm wearing, what I'm smelling, a nice diptyque candle always puts me in the mood to work. I have to have those things around me. So look at your aesthetic, look at how things are, how they're presenting in your life. And it's going to set the bar easily for you to reinvent yourself. Now, am I a reinvention coach? No, but I have been on this reinvention tip because I am coming to my 37th birthday, and I've realized that even though I live an incredible life, there are certain elements of my life that I want to either reinvent or strengthen. And because of that, I started really looking into reinvention. And these are the core values or the core elements of reinvention that I wanted to tackle in my 37th year. So that being financial, physical, spiritual, emotional, relational, and aesthetics. Once we master those, you can't tell me nothing. I'll be able to set goals and reach them because I have everything in my life realigned, right? And so I'll add one more to that list, and that is business. Some of us are in the wrong business, and we'll talk about that more on the next episode of Major Result. Listen, I'm Rock Mitchell. I am your host, and I want to thank you for spending this last 12 minutes with me. This little short podcast is something to encourage you to maybe you listen to it in the morning. Maybe you listen to it before you go to bed, just to calm you down, because y'all hear my voice is all nice and sultry. Yeah, but with that being said, hopefully you see this, a clip of this on Instagram or something, and you say, hey, let me check out the full podcast. Go ahead and do that. I think it's going to be a benefit to you. I'm Rock Mitchell. This is Major Result. Let's reinvent. Deuces.